Hey folks, today we're going to talk about some really fun things you can do with a 90-degree V-bit. Now, I'd had mine for a little while. I actually bought it with the machine, and I figured out one day, I thought, well, 90 degrees, if I do 90, 90, 90, I get a cube. I wonder if I could make some interesting things out of cube using, thin lumber and stuff like this. And some of you may say, well, okay, great, you can make a block. But once you've got flat pieces that you can then mill, you can do crazy things like that, or like that, or like this. Or if you're into acrylic, you can do things like this. So there are a lot of interesting possibilities for cubes, because once you've got them cut out, you end up with little pieces like this, right? That have your little edges right here, and these just made up like this. And you can glue them however you like. You can do this with different materials and what have you, but they're also flat, so you can carve things in them, and you can get some really interesting shapes and do some interesting designs. So let me show you how these get made. So the design for this one is pretty simple. This is the size of my stock, and I can cut a maximum of 4 sides at one time. Each one of these things is just simply a 3-inch square, right? And I've got them set right now to where they're locked midpoint to midpoint, which means they'll line up like this. The reason I'm doing it this way is that it means the grain of the wood will actually match going back and forth across the cube, which should give me a pretty nice little effect. So I need to cut a set of 4 like this, and then a set of 2. So let's do our tool paths for that. First we're going to cut the 4, and I'm going to add a tool path, scroll up, contour. Okay, and we want our V-bit. In my case, this is number 10. It's my 45-degree V-bit. The depth per pass, I'm going to go ahead and change. I want it to be not quite that deep. That'll cut them all in like one whack, which is probably not the best idea. So I'm going to go ahead and change this, 8. That should give me about 3 passes before it cuts in, before it cuts them completely. Okay, I'm going to use the stock bottom. I'm also going to change this to no offset because I want that bit to run right around those edges, just like that. Alright, so those are my cutouts. And I'm actually not going to do tabs on these. What I'm going to do is put double-sided tape underneath. I found the tabs tended to throw off the angle a little bit too much, so I didn't like that. Okay, so that will give me my first cutout. Hopefully that is right. The new version of Carbide Create is having some issues showing the simulation, but I think that's going to be right. I'll take a look at it later. But next I want to go ahead and add the same thing, only for 2 of the squares, because I'm going to cut the top and bottom out of a different piece. And we're going to no offset those, stock bottom, and make that cutout too. And again, I want to set that depth per pass to something a little more reasonable. Okay. Alright. And I think that looks good. We check my other one again just to make sure. 2408. No offset. Cool. Yeah, it's definitely doing something weird with the cutouts. But I think that's going to work anyway. So I'm going to disable this one. And I'm going to save my G-code as cubes. I'm going to say this is 4 up. Up. And then I'm going to disable this, enable this one, and that'll be my second pass on my shorter board. That'll give me 2 up. All right. Save, and let's go out and see how well this cuts. Okay, so now I've got my long piece that's going to have my 4 sides here, and I'm going to leave the dust collection shoe off while I do this, just so you can get a better idea of where things are cutting. I'm still going to do some manual vacuuming while it's happening, so don't worry about my lungs, I'm good. But everything should be set and ready to go. We just need to load up our file, and we should be good to go. Wonk. Oh, that was not good. Okay, so I have my 4 side pieces here, and there's one thing I want to do before I take these apart, and that's mark them. And I want to just kind of get my orientation right. That way I know how to put these back together in order so that that grain will follow all the way around. Now I can go ahead and take these off and go back to the bandsaw and cut out the rest of this, and I'll show you what I mean about the grain. Okay, so I've just got these laying together right now, but you should be able to see that grain follows really nicely around our edges there. And as we turn that box, it just continues on. That dark grain just continues right on the edge and around. And that gives us a really nice look to the finished box once we've got everything in place. And as far as our tops go, I mean, those essentially just drop right on like that, right? And we glue this all up after we've got whatever we want carved on this, or if we just want to leave it a solid block, we can. But I like to do little bits of carving on this, and I'll show you how to do one of those next. Okay, so this is just one of my typical handy-dandy centering jigs. This piece of MDF. It's basically a cutout shape that will fit one of my side pieces. They just slot down in there like this. And this is designed so that the center of this jig is at the rapid position center of the machine. So when I carve this out, I did it from center, and then I'll do my designs here by center. One thing I tended to notice when I was doing these sort of small pieces is if I had any kind of dust collection going, they would tend to lift and kind of pull themselves out. So I made myself a couple of little clamps that just sit down in these circular holes and hold the piece firm. Now, we're going to do this in 2 passes. I've got one that's just a simple trace with my V-bit, and that's going to draw around, and then I've got a 16-inch bit that I'm going to change out and do the cutouts that'll go all the way through. So let's go ahead and check this and make sure I've got everything right. One of the things that you're going to notice, let's see, so I almost had a small catastrophe here. I've got my piece centered and it's set and ready to go. But watch what happens when I hit run. It wants to move up over here. That tells me that when I set my file up, I was actually in the corner and not in the center. So I need to adjust my file and do this over again. Be careful whenever you do this. When you first turn that thing and hit run, if it whizzes off to some strange place, hit quit. Get it out, you know, keep it from going in. Otherwise, you can mess up a project really easily. Okay, So for this cut, we're going to start out using our V-bit like this, and we're just going to do a trace of the outer area. Then we're going to switch to this wee tiny little guy, and he's going to do our detailed stuff in the middle. Now, one of the things when you're switching bits and jobs, you save as two different files. You load the first file, use the first bit, then you need to load the second file and use the second bit. You'll also need to reposition this Z height because the bits are going to be at different heights in the collet, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So right now this is set up and ready to go, and I'm going to go ahead and do the pass on the V. Okay, and that's just got our nice little outline circle. That's all I want for that one. Now I want to change my bit out, and I'll go ahead and show you. Just need to reposition this. Okay, so now I have my 16th inch bit here that's in, and because we've changed bits, that bit may be up further in the collet, it may be a shorter bit, so we need to adjust our Z axis. Our X and Y don't change because we're still going to be in the center of this piece. So I can do rapid position right back to my center, and then I'm just going to drop this guy down. Okay, and use my paper to get myself lined up again. Yeah, that feels about right. And when I set 0, you'll notice that my other things are already at 0. I just need to 0 that Z axis. I don't need to 0 anything else. But that should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and put the dust collection on for this one, and you won't be able to see quite as much, but we'll go ahead and get it cut. Okay, so here's our cutout piece, and as you can see, we got a little bit too precious with the width on these. We snapped off this one and this one, so I think what I'm probably going to do is go back in and decrease the size of these cutouts. I'll use the inset tool to bring those in a little bit. That'll make the leftover bits of wood a little thicker. I'm also going to increase the depth per pass because right now this is taking somewhere in the neighborhood of about an hour and a half, which is a little ridiculous. So let's see if we can't make that a little bit better, and I will come back in and clean this up and we'll do another pass. One thing that I would definitely say to do when you're first starting to do these is cut the patterns on your bottom and your top, because those do not necessarily have the matching grain, and that way if you do something like this and it's not to your liking, you can recut those and still have the continuous grain pattern that you do along the sides of the other ones. So I'm going to make some modifications to this, and we'll come back and cut another one and see how that works. Okay, so now that I've got my design kind of dialed in for this, I can go ahead and start doing my, my sides with this. And the way I'm going to do this time is I'm going to go ahead and batch these out so that I don't have to do a bit change in the middle of each one. I'm just going to do all of my 16th inch pass first, and then put them back in. Since I've got them in this nice little centering jig, they're all going to line up just fine. I just need to make sure that when I put them in, I'm ordering the grain the same way. And in this case, what I'm doing is I'm going to put my arrow pointing that way, and I know that I've got each one going in the same way when I put these in. So I'll do one pass with my 16th, and then redo all of them with the V-carve, and we should be done. Okay, so now I've got my sides cut out, and you can see how nicely that grain just lines up all the way down the sides. So this should give us a really nice effect. I'm going to go ahead and do some sanding and cleanup, and then I'll show you how to glue these up. Okay, so now we're going to talk assembly. Now I've got my 4 sides here with my grain lined the way I want them to be. I've got my top over here off to one side. I don't need that just yet. And I've got a piece of blue painter's tape that's laying sticky side up. And I got a brush and a little bit of glue. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take these, I'm going to flip them over, and I'm going to put them on the tape so that they line up together. edge to edge. All right. Make sure that you get them oriented the way you want. That one's a little bit off. You want the tops and bottoms to be aligned on these. Yeah. I'll lay them in there. Okay. Did I just screw that up? I think I did. I will check in just a second. So now if I flip this over, I should still have all my grains aligned. Yes, and I do. Good. So I'm also going to put out a second piece of tape along the bottom edge. This will help me a little bit when I'm aligning stuff, just to make sure that I get a good fit on all of it. So again, just laying that sticky side up, trying to get it not to stick to my fingers. Okay, and then I'm going to move these guys in and try not to get my elbow in the way of the camera. Okay, cool. Alright, edges still together, tops and bottoms align, and tear off the excess on this end because we're going to wrap these around. Okay, and then I'm going to just try and test fit it a little bit just to make sure I've got enough play, right? So you just fold it up like that, all right? And then once we've got our glue in there, you'll tape it and everything should just turn out fine. So first we're going to get a little bit of glue. Okay, so now we got our glue down. Let's go ahead and tape this guy up. I lift this, and our pieces just fit together. Alright, and then I'm going to bring this guy up, get him to where he's nice and aligned, top and bottom, and then I'm going to tape my tape over, and this acts as a vise for our cube. Right, so now we've got everything nice and taped up, our edges look good, and in order to make sure that it's square, I can go ahead and drop that top down in there as well. I'm going to wait until this one dries before I do that. Make sure I've got all these guys flat down there. As long as my top looks good, I should be square. Right now I've got a little bit too much tape sticking up to get that top on, so I'm going to go ahead and wait until this dries. And then we'll get the top on. Okay, so we've let this dry for about a half hour. You don't want to stress it, but the glue should be pretty well set by now. At least keep its form. We can take our tape off, take a look and see if we messed anything up. No, this is looking nice. Okay. You'll want to get rid of any squeeze out that happens up here so that your top and bottom will sit flat. Get a little bit there, I can get with my fingernail. Okay. So like I said, our grain follows nicely around the sides. That gives us a really nice look. And then all we have to do next is decide on the orientation we want for our top and glue that in there. And once we're done with that, I'll go ahead and put some finish on it and kind of show you what the what the finished box is going to look like. I'm going to leave the bottom off for right now because I'm probably going to put some lights in this one, and I may do a companion video to this to kind of show how that works. But this is what we've got right now. I'll go ahead and glue the top on, and then we'll throw some finish on and take a look and see what we got. Okay, for a finish on something like this, I typically am going to do something like a Watco Danish oil. It's pretty idiot proof. I tend to like it because it really does bring out a lot of nice stuff in the wood. And you get cat view, because Rory would like to get in the middle of this. You are not helpful. You're very not helpful, and you don't need to get Danish oil on you. That's one of the things that I really love about cherry is once the finish hits it, you really get some nice coloring in there.